5 years ago, my parents told me I couldn't protect my company alone. I believed them. 3 months later, I couldn't even unlock my own office. My name is Stella Hayes. At 26, I had spent 3 years building Hayes Logistics Tech from nothing. I worked 12-hour days, slept under my desk, and poured every dollar I had into developing our software. Then the company took off. Major clients signed contracts, revenue climbed, investors started calling. That's when my parents began telling me I needed help. "You're carrying too much," my mother Evelyn said. "Let Chloe handle the administrative work." Chloe was my younger sister, and in my parents' eyes, the golden child. "She's never worked in tech," I said. "She doesn't need to," Dad replied. "She'll handle paperwork and scheduling. You can focus on growth." Mom took my hand. "She's your sister. If you can't trust family, who can you trust?" I gave Chloe limited access. At first, she seemed useful. She organized invoices and answered routine emails. Then she started talking directly to my clients. "I'm just making things easier for you," she said. A few weeks later, she brought me documents to sign. "Your accountant needs these updated." I signed them between 2 meetings without reading every page. Then Chloe started joining client calls. Employees began going to her instead of me. When I questioned it, she smiled. "Mom thinks I should understand the business better." I let it go. That was my mistake. Over the next few weeks, Chloe quietly gained access to more contracts, financial records, and internal systems. Then, one Monday morning, my security badge failed. I tried again. Denied. I called IT. The technician sounded nervous. "Stella, your access was removed Friday night." "By who?" He hesitated. "Your father." I drove straight to the office. The server room locks had been changed. My bank access was frozen. My client database was gone. Then I discovered something worse. Every major contract I'd built over 3 years had been transferred to a company registered under Chloe's name. I called my mother. "What did you do?" Her voice was strangely calm. "We decided Chloe should run the company." Then Chloe walked into the room. She didn't look shocked. She looked prepared. "Stella," she said softly, "you should have read what you signed." My stomach tightened. That night, I searched through the company's archived records. I found an authorization agreement buried in a folder I'd never seen before. The date stopped me cold. It had been signed 3 months before my parents ever suggested Chloe join the company. But there was something even stranger. The agreement wasn't signed by my parents. And whoever had signed it had already planned what would happen to my company. I stared at the name on the final page. I knew it, but I had no idea why they were involved. The name on the document was Daniel Mercer, my father's longtime attorney. I had trusted Daniel for years. Now his signature was on a document created 3 months before. Chloe ever joined my company. I called him the next morning. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then at 9:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. "Stella, we need to talk. Come alone." I drove to his office. When Daniel opened the door, his face told me he already knew why I was there. "You found the agreement," he said. "Why did you prepare it?" He didn't answer. Instead, he walked to a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. "Look at the dates." I opened it. Meeting notes, account authorizations, draft contracts. Chloe's name appeared again and again. Some documents were dated weeks before she officially joined my company. Then I found an email from my mother. The subject made my hands go cold. "Project Chloe, final transfer." I looked at Daniel. "What is this?" He swallowed. "I was instructed to prepare the paperwork." "By my parents?" He nodded. "But they told me you had approved the arrangement." "I never approved anything." "I know." He opened another file. Inside was a draft, transferring my remaining intellectual property to Chloe's company. But beside the signature line was a blank space. "Your father never completed the final authorization," Daniel said. I stared at the document. "So they took my clients and contracts, but not the software itself?" "Correct." That distinction changed everything. They had taken operational control. They had taken the contracts. They had taken the money. But the core software IP was still legally tied to me. I almost smiled. Then I stopped myself. Owning the underlying IP didn't magically restore my company. I was broke, locked out, and surrounded by people who had already destroyed my reputation. The discovery wasn't a victory. Not yet. Daniel handed me one final folder. "This was attached to your original development records." Inside was an old technical document I'd written myself. At the bottom, I found my original ownership clause. "All core intellectual property remains the exclusive property of Stella Hayes unless transferred through a separate executed agreement." I read it twice. They hadn't taken everything. They had only taken everything they could reach. I left Daniel's office with the document hidden inside my coat. That night, I packed my belongings into my car. I left the city before sunrise. I took a night shift job at a data center and started rebuilding from scratch. No family, no investors, no shortcuts. Just me, a borrowed laptop, and the one thing they had failed to steal: my knowledge. For the next 5 years, I worked in silence. And while my parents believed they had erased me forever, I was building a company they would one day desperately need. I just didn't know yet that they would be the ones coming back. "Stella, we need to talk." I recognized the voice immediately. My mother. For 5 years, I hadn't heard from Evelyn Hayes. Not one birthday message. Not one apology. Nothing. Then she invited me to a family dinner. Sunday, 7 o'clock. I almost laughed. "Why?" "We need to discuss something important." "After 5 years?" She paused. "Please, Stella." Then she said the one thing that made me stop. "Your father thinks you can help Chloe." I looked around my office. 5 years earlier, I had left with almost nothing. Now I was sitting inside the headquarters of Hayes Cybernetics, the cybersecurity company I had built from scratch. It hadn't happened overnight. For 2 years, I worked nights at a data center while building my new security platform during the day. My first client came from a small logistics company. Then another. By year 3, we had 12 corporate clients. By year 5, companies across the country were trusting my software to protect their systems. I never contacted my parents. I never told them what I'd built. But somehow they knew. "What happened to Chloe?" I asked. My mother's voice dropped. "Her company is failing." "How bad?" "Bad enough that your father believes you can save it." I leaned back. That wasn't an invitation. It was desperation. They didn't want their daughter back. They wanted the daughter they had betrayed to rescue the one they had chosen. "Fine," I said. "Really? I'll come Sunday." I ended the call, but I wasn't going there to reconcile. I was going there to find out what Arthur had been hiding. Before dinner, I reopened the old files from Daniel's office. There it was. Project Chloe, final transfer. I studied the reference number at the bottom. It matched the encrypted file I had discovered years earlier. This time the file opened. One page appeared. At the top was my father's name, Arthur Hayes. Below it was a transaction date. The same week they had locked me out of my company. But there was no ordinary payment listed. Instead, the transaction referenced a private agreement with an outside entity. I read the description twice. My hands went cold. The agreement had been created before Chloe officially joined my company. And beside Arthur's name was a phrase that made no sense at first. "Removal of controlling founder, required condition." I stared at the screen. Controlling founder, me. Suddenly, everything looked different. Maybe Chloe had never been the real reason they wanted my company. Maybe they had needed me gone for something much bigger. And on Sunday night, I was going to sit across the table from my father and find out exactly what it was. Sunday night, I arrived at my parents' estate early. I was prepared. Before leaving my office, I had sent copies of everything to my attorney. My mother opened the door with a smile. "Stella." Inside, everything looked familiar. Except Chloe. She looked terrified. My father stood at the dining table. "I'm glad you came." I sat down. "Tell me why." Arthur exchanged a glance with Evelyn. "Chloe's company is collapsing. Her clients are threatening lawsuits. The banks are demanding payment. And you want me to save her?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because we're family. That word didn't matter 5 years ago." I placed a folder on the table. "Project Chloe." My mother's expression changed. Arthur stared at the document. "You weren't supposed to find that. Why did you need me removed?" He stayed silent. Finally, he said, "There was an investor. They wanted control of the company." "Why?" Arthur looked down. "Your technology." The room went silent. "The IP." He didn't answer. I opened another folder. My attorney traced the agreement. Inside were records connecting the investor to multiple cybersecurity investigations. My father had promised them access to my technology in exchange for funding and control. Chloe suddenly stood. "I didn't know." Arthur looked at her. "Chloe, you told me I was taking over Stella's company. You never told me about an investor." She looked at me. "I didn't know about any of this." "You still took everything from me." Her eyes dropped. "I know." I turned to Arthur. "You had one problem." He looked at me. "You never owned the core IP." His face went pale. The original ownership agreement was never transferred. He stared at me. Then he understood. "You didn't come here for your company." "No. I came here because I knew what you did." At 8:12 the next morning, my attorney called. The investor terminated the agreement. I exhaled. Then he continued. 2 major clients canceled their contracts after reviewing the transfer records. And the banks? They froze the disputed accounts pending investigation. For the first time, Arthur looked completely defeated. The deal he'd spent 5 years preparing was dead. And this time, there was nothing he could sign to fix it. I didn't take their house. I didn't need it. As I walked away, I looked back once. Chloe was still sitting at the table, staring at the documents that had destroyed everything she thought she owned. My mother called after me. Stella. I stopped. Don't you want your family back? I looked at her. I did. Then I walked away. 5 years ago, they thought taking my company would destroy me. They were wrong. They didn't destroy Stella Hayes. They created her. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Revenge Diaries for more powerful family betrayal, revenge and justice stories,